The day my life collapsed did not arrive with thunder or drama. It came quietly, like rot spreading beneath polished wood, unnoticed until everything gave way. I had built my world around trust, believing loyalty was a constant when nurtured with honesty and effort. For years, I poured myself into my marriage and my business, foolishly assuming dedication guaranteed protection. It took one unlocked phone and a message preview, just one careless notification, for my illusions to snap. Her words to him were soft and intimate, filled with affection she had not spoken to me in months, and his reply held a confidence no stranger ever should have had toward my wife. It was in that moment I understood betrayal does not stab, it suffocates. It steals breath before it spills blood. I did not rage. People imagine anger explodes, but real hurt hardens. My silence frightened her more than shouting ever could. She tried to play confused at first, acting offended that I dared ask who Adil was. But lies crumble fast under the weight of truth, and she knew she had already lost the ability to control the narrative. Eventually, she admitted everything. The messages, the meetings, the nights she claimed she was with friends but was with him. She said it was a mistake, that she still loved me, that it meant nothing. But months of deceit never mean nothing. People do not repeatedly betray for nothing. She underestimated the damage she caused. She thought I would break, cry, beg, or fight for her. Instead, I watched her unravel as I remained cold, calculating, and quiet. Revenge is most powerful when delivered without noise. I did not confront him angrily. I did not expose them to family or friends, not yet. Emotion-driven retaliation satisfies pride but wastes power. I wanted something greater than momentary satisfaction. I wanted truth to destroy them by its own weight. I started documenting everything. Messages, call logs, hotel receipts she forgot to delete, screenshots she thought she hid. When she realized I was not reacting the way she expected, she panicked. She suddenly became affectionate, cooking for me, talking sweetly, asking if I was okay. Guilt makes traitors desperate. I watched her try to save what she had already burned. It was pathetic. I reached out to the man she betrayed me with, not directly but subtly. I knew where he worked, the company he was trying so hard to climb in, where reputation mattered more than skill. I prepared a simple conversation log. Nothing emotional, just facts and timestamps. I sent it anonymously to his HR department with one sentence. This employee is engaging in inappropriate conduct and using company time and resources to pursue an affair with a married woman. Companies do not investigate emotions. They investigate threats to reputation. He disappeared from her life within a week, blocked her, changed his number. I did not need to ask what happened. Her meltdown said enough. One betrayal partner gone, one crack deepened. Then I turned to my wife, not with rage but with precision. I called a private meeting with her parents and mine. I presented everything calmly, methodically, without drama. Facts sting harder than insults. They watched her collapse into tears as her double life surfaced. She begged them to tell me to forgive her. She claimed she was confused and going through emotional stress. Excuses are always born from fear of consequences. I told them I would be filing for separation and dividing assets legally. No shouting, no theatrics, just controlled action. That is when fear replaced guilt in her eyes. But revenge was not complete yet. See, betrayal teaches something many never learn until too late. Loyalty is not free. It must be earned continuously. So I did not destroy her publicly, though I could have. I did something worse. I let her live with the consequences she created. I moved out quietly, refusing her calls, ignoring her attempts to apologize, blocking her from reclaiming the comfort she expected to fall back on. She thought I would eventually soften. Betrayers always believe they still hold power over the person they hurt. She learned otherwise. I rebuilt slowly and deliberately. I poured attention into my work, reconnected with old friends I'd neglected, returned to hobbies I once abandoned to support her world. Each step forward was fuel. People noticed the change, more focused, colder, sharper. Pain, when channeled correctly, transforms into discipline. She reached out through mutual acquaintances, telling them she could not sleep, could not eat, wished she had never made that mistake. Regret visits late, always after doors are locked. I did not take her back. Not because forgiveness is weakness, but because some fractures do not heal. They simply reveal who someone truly is. Her life did not collapse publicly. That mercy was intentional. Life handles its own punishment. She lives now with the knowledge she traded loyalty for momentary attention and lost a future built with love, stability, and respect. I know she scrolls through our old photos, replays our memories, and wonders when exactly she threw her life away. That is a sentence harsher than anything I could design. Revenge, when done right, is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not seek applause. It is silent endurance followed by strategic action and complete detachment. I never needed to destroy her. I simply removed myself and let her drown in the absence of everything she took for granted. Justice is not always about punishment. Sometimes it is about letting people face themselves without the comfort they betrayed. And me? I walk forward, not driven by pain anymore, but sharpened by it. I learned to value trust, but to guard it. I learned that love is powerful, but self-respect is greater. Losing someone who betrays you is not a loss, it is a correction. And while she looks back, I only move ahead. Some moments don't destroy you. They expose who you have been pretending not to be. After that day, after standing in a conference room and feeling invisible while someone else wore my work like a crown, I walked home with a silence inside me that felt heavier than anger. The world outside was loud, traffic, voices, life happening everywhere. But inside my head, everything was frozen. I moved like someone going through the motions, unlocking the apartment door, putting my bag down, removing my tie, placing my laptop on the table. But none of it felt real. It felt like I was watching myself from a distance, like a bystander observing a stranger's life. I looked in the mirror, and for a moment, I didn't recognize myself. Not because I looked broken, but because I finally saw what I had been hiding. Disappointment. Not disappointment in him, disappointment in me, in my patience, my blind loyalty, my belief that hard work alone was enough. I always thought dignity came from endurance, that if I kept quiet, respected the process, stayed humble, things would eventually shift in my favor. But that day shattered that illusion. Endurance means nothing in a place built to keep you beneath someone else's shoes. I sat on my bed and stared at the ceiling, and for the first time since joining that company, I asked myself, what if I have been wrong? What if loyalty in the wrong hands isn't noble? It's foolish. Every late night, every weekend sacrificed, every time I told myself, my time will come, suddenly felt like I had been writing success on water, watching it evaporate every morning. I opened my laptop because doing nothing wasn't an option. Doing nothing would mean accepting that they were right about me. Searching for jobs felt like walking backward. All the job listings felt like different versions of the same cage. New desk, new boss, same story. Then I looked at business opportunities, and my chest tightened. It felt like staring at a mountain with no ropes and no map. I typed random questions into the search bar, like someone drowning grasps at anything that floats. Motivation quotes filled my screen, empty words like stay strong and believe in yourself. Cute phrases for posters, not solutions for someone whose career had been dragged through the dirt publicly. But then, quietly among the noise, something real appeared. A business leadership training program. No dramatic music, no bold promises, just structure, skill building, strategy. It didn't promise dreams, it promised tools. And I realized something in that moment. I didn't need inspiration. I needed direction. I needed power, not over others, but over my future. I clicked enroll without hesitation, without overthinking, almost like my soul moved before my brain could catch up. That click was the quietest rebellion I ever made. Days passed and my routine changed. Mornings belonged to the office, the battlefield. Evenings belonged to lessons, videos, notes, plans. Nights belonged to quiet confidence, rebuilding itself brick by brick. I showed up to work like before, except now I carried a secret. I was no longer theirs. They didn't own my future. They didn't get to decide my destiny. Every instruction Haroon gave me no longer felt like an order. It felt like noise. Background noise to a bigger mission forming silently inside me. But fate doesn't stay silent long. One day my phone buzzed and I saw a name I recognized immediately. A long-term client. Someone with influence. Someone who wasn't blind to the truth. His voice held something different. Concern mixed with respect. I know what happened, he said. I know who really built that project. When you start your own firm, and I know you will, call me. That moment didn't just feel good. It felt historic, like the universe quietly leaned in and whispered, keep going. From that day, things shifted inside me. My steps felt firmer. My silence felt stronger. Every task I did at the office, I did knowing it was temporary. I wasn't building their empire anymore. I was gathering blueprints for my own. I began noticing the cracks, the inefficiencies, the unhappy employees, the frustrated clients who smiled in meetings but rolled their eyes outside. A broken system disguised as success. And Haroon? He still walked like a king in a castle made of glass, convinced nothing could ever shake him. He never noticed the quiet storm forming behind him, the one he accidentally created the day he chose humiliation over leadership. One evening, after finishing another lesson, I stepped onto my balcony. The city lights didn't look distant anymore. They looked reachable. The wind felt different. Not comforting, but challenging, like it was testing whether I was ready to move. I wasn't dreaming of his chair anymore. His position wasn't a throne. It was a cage. I wanted something bigger. I wanted the freedom to build, to lead, to create without asking permission. That night I realized, breaking points don't always look dramatic. Sometimes they look calm. Sometimes they feel like clarity settling over you like a final answer. I went inside, opened my notebook, and instead of writing goals, I wrote truths. Truths about what I deserved, what I was capable of, and what I would never tolerate again. I didn't write about revenge. Revenge wasn't the fuel anymore. Evolution was. My humiliation didn't break me. It stripped me down to the part of me capable of rising. I closed the notebook and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. I wasn't trapped. I was preparing. The world didn't change that night. Nobody clapped. There was no dramatic music, but a shift happened, where once I felt powerless, now I felt inevitable. I didn't know every step yet, but I knew where I was going. Forward, upward, beyond anything they imagined for me. I wasn't planning to take his seat. I was preparing to build a place where he didn't even qualify to stand. Silence became my armor. Discipline became my fuel. While the world saw me still sitting at my desk in that office, quietly following orders, they had no idea what was happening underneath. The old version of me would have waited for recognition. The new version didn't need anyone to see me. Success grows strongest where eyes are blind. My mornings were no longer slow. I woke before dawn, sometimes when the city lights still flickered, and the sky hadn't decided whether to turn blue yet. I sat at my tiny table, opened my laptop, and learned. Strategy, leadership, negotiation, branding, systems. I didn't skip a single subject. I wasn't just preparing to leave that company. I was preparing to never need a company again. Every hour I put into that training sharpened a blade nobody else could see. When I walked into the office later, nobody could sense the fire under my calm face. I did my assigned tasks as if nothing had changed, as if I were still the quiet employee who once believed loyalty was enough to rise. But in my mind, I was already stepping out of that place. Each meeting where Haroon flaunted confidence but displayed incompetence only strengthened my determination. The truth is, the world doesn't fear loud leaders. It fears the quiet ones who are busy learning, while others are busy talking. Haroon believed the office admired him. He thought people respected him, but I had stayed long enough to notice the truth hidden in lowered eyes and tired voices. People didn't stay because they loved working there. They stayed because they had bills. They obeyed him not because he was a leader, but because he was a gatekeeper who stood in front of their paycheck. Every time he dismissed someone's idea, every time he raised his voice to assert dominance, another person silently planned an exit. He thought silence meant loyalty. He never understood silence can also be the sound of people giving up on you. I watched, quietly, as projects started slipping. Clients sent polite emails but mentioned concerns indirectly. Employees whispered in corners about quitting someday when they finally saved enough. And Haroon walked around like a man who believed nothing would ever touch him. Confidence is powerful. Delusion is dangerous. His arrogance blinded him to the truth. The empire he thought he built was already cracking. Meanwhile, I was building the opposite. Slowly, carefully, brick by brick, in a place nobody was watching. I saved aggressively, cut expenses, made spreadsheets, built a business plan, contacted mentors, and joined forums where real entrepreneurs talked about real challenges. Success isn't built on dreams alone. It's built on preparation. I wasn't chasing motivation. Motivation fades, systems stay. And I was building systems. The turning point came quietly, almost casually. A client I'd worked with for years called me and said, almost like sharing a secret, that he valued my contribution far more than the company itself. If you start something of your own, he said, you won't walk alone. He didn't need to say more. That one sentence was worth more than every fake compliment Haroon ever gave me. That moment didn't inflate my ego. It confirmed my path. When I finally registered my business, there was no dramatic moment. No celebration photos, no champagne, no shouting in excitement. I simply sat for a minute in silence and felt the weight of a new beginning settle in my chest. My office wasn't in a glass building. It didn't have shining floors or luxury chairs. It had a desk, a borrowed chair, an old laptop, an ambition that could fill a skyscraper. Great things never start grand. They start honest. Hiring my first employee felt symbolic. It wasn't charity. It wasn't rebellion. It was principle. Talent deserves a stage, not a dismissal. When that person walked into my small office for the first time, they saw limitations. I saw foundations. Our first contract didn't make headlines. It didn't shake the market, but it was ours. Earned, not handed. When the client signed the agreement, I didn't shout. I didn't scream in triumph. I simply smiled. A slow, quiet smile. Because I knew this was the beginning of a climb that no one could stop but me. Every evening after office hours, I walked into my small office like I was walking into my future. And instead of complaining about long days, I felt proud. Tired, yes, but proud. Some nights I sat in that chair until my back ached and my eyes burned. But I preferred exhaustion with purpose over comfort, with humiliation. Haroon, meanwhile, carried his hollow confidence like armor made of glass. He still barked orders, still pretended everything was under control, still believed no one could rise without his approval. People like him never see the shift until it stands in front of them. And I didn't need to expose him. Life would do that eventually. Arrogance always collects its debt. There came a day when he walked past me in the office, barely looking at me, assuming I was still the same quiet employee who once chased his praise. But he didn't realize something important. I wasn't chasing anything anymore. I was building, and builders don't compete. They create new tables instead of begging for seats. I didn't rise with noise. I didn't rise with anger. The best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's rising so far beyond their imagination that they look up one day and realize they only pushed you towards something greater. I didn't want to defeat him. That was too small a goal. I wanted to evolve into someone who no longer existed in his world. Someone whose success didn't need to reflect his failure, because the gap between us would already speak loudly enough. And I knew, deep inside, a day was coming. A day when he would see my name somewhere unexpected. A day when rumors would reach him about my growing company. A day when the quiet employee he laughed at would stand beyond his reach. I didn't need to take revenge loudly. I just needed to rise quietly. So quietly that when the world finally noticed, it would look like I appeared out of nowhere, while I would know the truth. I built every step in silence while they slept. Momentum did not announce itself with noise or glory. It crept in quietly, the way dawn replaces darkness without asking permission. I remember the early signs, small victories that would have looked insignificant to anyone else. A client praising our delivery speed, another saying they felt valued, not managed. My team staying late, not because they feared losing their job, but because they believed in what we were building. Progress was slow enough to keep us humble, but consistent enough to make doubt unwelcome. That is the beauty of real growth. It feels gentle until one day you realize you have outgrown everything that once limited you. Every morning, I woke up with purpose instead of dread. My office was small, my resources limited, but the weight I used to carry in that old company, the exhaustion, the humiliation, the shrinking, was gone. I breathed differently now. Straight spine, clear head, steady hands. There was no boss's shadow hovering over my shoulder. No laughter meant to belittle me. No voice reminding me to know my place. I was finally building a place I did not need to survive. A place I could thrive in. Meanwhile, cracks in Haroon's kingdom deepened. Insecure leaders never see their fall coming because they mistake fear for loyalty and silence for respect. One employee left, then another, then one more. Not loudly, not with drama, but silently, the way people leave a sinking ship when they realize the captain is too proud to steer. Clients who once smiled politely during meetings began speaking honestly behind closed doors. They were tired of arrogance, tired of excuses, tired of someone who believed dominance was leadership. Haroon's team still pretended everything was under control, but panic lives in the eyes long before it reaches the voice. I kept my focus. I did not celebrate his decline. I did not chase rumors or savor his losses. My energy stayed where it belonged, on what I was building. Revenge rooted in obsession is weak. Revenge rooted in growth is unstoppable. And whether he realized it or not, every mistake he made, every person he pushed away, every client he disappointed was paving a path toward my rise. I did not sabotage him. I did not play dirty. All I did was offer the world an alternative, a place where dignity mattered and results spoke louder than ego. Then came the moment the wind shifted completely. One afternoon, I received an email from a major corporation, a name powerful enough to turn small firms into industry players. They offered me a chance to bid for a project big enough to change my company's trajectory. But, more important than the opportunity, was the reason they reached out. Word of character, word of reliability, word of respect. The very qualities that had made me invisible in my old job were now becoming my advantage. It is funny how life works. The traits mocked by small men become the traits rewarded by bigger worlds. I accepted the meeting and prepared like my future depended on it. Not with fear, with hunger, quiet, disciplined hunger. I did not walk into that conference room to prove anything to anyone. I walked in to claim what I had earned. Confidence, when built on merit instead of ego, is the most powerful currency in any room. And then life, in its poetic timing, decided to complete a circle. Haroon was there. Same polished shoes, same perfect tie, same practiced smirk. But the energy had shifted. He did not look at me like an inferior anymore. He looked at me like a threat he failed to predict. His eyes tried to hide insecurity, but insecurity has a way of leaking through even the most expensive suit fabric. He attempted a casual tone, but every word carried strain. When he said, "So, you started your own thing," it wasn't curiosity. It was disbelief wrapped in denial. I did not need to raise my voice or brag. Power does not need performance. "Yes, and it's doing well," I answered simply, and the room felt heavier. He blinked, forced a nod, forced a smile that cracked at the edges. That was when he understood. The person he once humiliated was no longer fighting for space at his table. I had built my own table, and people were willingly choosing to sit at it. That moment was not triumph. It was transition. I did not feel anger or satisfaction. I felt clarity. His downfall was never my mission. My rise was, revenge had transformed long ago, from a wound driving fury to a purpose driving growth. I did not need to destroy him. Life would handle that. People like him collapse under the weight of their own pride eventually. All I had to do was keep rising. As I walked out of that room, I did not feel taller because of his fear or his confusion. I felt taller because of every silent morning I studied, every late night I worked, every doubt I crushed, every risk I embraced. My journey had not been fueled by anger. Anger was merely the spark. Discipline, resilience, and belief did the heavy lifting. That day confirmed something powerful. The real shift does not happen when your enemy falls. It happens when you realize their existence no longer defines your path. I was not the man he tried to break. I was the man who used the breaking to rebuild stronger. And as I stepped into the next phase of my journey, one truth echoed louder than any insult ever thrown at me. The greatest revenge is not proving someone wrong. It is becoming someone they can never catch. The moment the board announced their decision, time felt strangely still. There was no cheering, no dramatic applause, just a quiet shift in the room. The kind of silence that carries truth. I sat there, breathing slowly, grounded, feeling the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't shock. It was clarity, like opening a window in a suffocating room and finally feeling air again. For years I had waited for someone to recognize my worth. But in that moment, I realized something powerful. I had recognized it myself long before this endorsement arrived. This wasn't validation. It was confirmation. Haroon's eyes flickered between disbelief and forced composure. His mouth tried forming a confident smile, but it trembled at the edges. He extended his hand and I shook it, not out of obligation, but out of closure. His fingers tightened for a second, as if gripping the last thread of superiority he once believed he owned. I didn't squeeze back. I didn't try to overpower the handshake. I simply met it with calm. That calm must have burned more than any retaliation ever could. We walked out of the meeting hall surrounded by murmurs. People glanced between us. The once powerful boss and the quiet employee he dismissed. The energy had shifted, not loud or dramatic, but undeniably. Inside the elevator, standing side by side like two parallel stories suddenly converging, he broke the silence. "You worked hard," he muttered, voice low, almost human for the first time. Not admiration, not praise, just reluctant acknowledgement. I nodded. Yes, I did. No arrogance, no gloating, just truth. When the elevator doors opened, he stepped out quickly, eager to escape the gravity of defeat. Failure clung to his posture, weighing him down, shrinking the man who once towered over others. I walked out at my own pace, steady, purposeful. Every step reminded me where I had started. Small desk, low salary, unseen effort. silent humiliation. But I didn't dwell on it. I didn't need to. I wasn't running away from my past anymore. I was walking into my future. Outside, the air felt different. Not lighter, but fuller. Like the world was no longer pressing down on my chest, but expanding ahead of me. My phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from my team, client congratulations, silent celebrations waiting to explode. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I stood there for a moment and let everything sink in. I had not stolen this victory. I had earned it. Word by word, hour by hour, late night after late night. Success didn't wash over me like a wave. It settled into me like a truth I had always known, but finally lived. I thought back to that day in the office, when laughter echoed around me, when his words cut deeper than anyone realized, when nobody stood up for me. It felt like a lifetime ago, like watching someone else's story. A person I used to be, sitting there swallowing humiliation because he believed staying silent was strength. But that version of me wasn't weak. He was growing in the shadows, learning, absorbing, preparing. Pain hadn't broken me. It had shaped me. As I headed to my car, I realized revenge was never about making him suffer the way he made me suffer. That kind of bitterness corrodes from the inside. If I had spent my energy plotting his downfall, I would have remained trapped in his shadow. Instead, I climbed out of it. Success wasn't my retaliation. Growth was, freedom was. Becoming someone who no longer needed his approval, his space, his position. That was the real victory. Later, at the office, my team gathered around, anticipating celebration. They knew it was a big moment, but they didn't know the history behind it. They didn't know how deeply personal this triumph was. They didn't need to. This journey wasn't about rubbing success in anyone's face. It was about proving to myself that I could rise without stepping on others the way someone once stepped on me. We celebrated quietly. Good food, laughter, relief, pride. Real happiness doesn't scream. It breathes. It settles into a room and fills it with warmth. In their eyes, I saw respect. Not the kind forced by authority, but the kind earned through example. And I remembered something important. True leadership isn't granted by rank. It is earned by the way you lift others, not the way you push them down. Later that night, alone in my office, I looked out at the city lights. The same city where I once felt invisible now mirrored possibility back at me. I didn't think of Haroon with anger. I thought of him with distance. He was not my enemy anymore. He was simply a chapter, one that pushed me, tested me, shaped me, and then became irrelevant. Revenge, I realized, was never about making someone fall. That's too small, too temporary. Anyone can trip another person. But not everyone can rise after being stepped on and build something greater. Real revenge is rising so high that their opinion, their insult, their power no longer matters. Real revenge is outgrowing the place where you were once underestimated. That night, I closed my laptop knowing tomorrow would bring new challenges, new risks, new goals. But I wasn't afraid. I was ready. I didn't need to look back anymore. There was nothing left behind that I wanted. Not a seat at someone else's table, not approval, not recognition. I had built my own place, my own voice, my own path. He once told me I wasn't leadership material. Today proved something he never understood. Leaders aren't chosen. They are forged. In pressure, in silence, in struggle, in patience. And the people who rise from that fire don't burn others to feel powerful. They light the way forward. That was my turning point. Not winning the contract, not defeating him, but realizing I no longer needed the world that once tried to shrink me. I had grown beyond it, and nothing, not his words, not his laughter, not his doubt, could take that away again. Rumors didn't roar into the world like a storm. They slithered in, soft and steady, curling through offices and WhatsApp groups, slipping between industry calls and coffee shop murmurs. At first, it was disbelief disguised as curiosity. Someone mentioning a delayed project, another hinting at senior staff resigning. People didn't want to believe it. Haroon had always presented himself as untouchable, the kind of man who treated success like a throne built only for him. But even thrones start to wobble when the foundation weakens, and his foundation had always been ego, not integrity. Soon, the whispers sharpened into quiet claims, and claims formed into confirmation. The company was stumbling, and it wasn't because of one mistake, but because every mistake he ever hid finally caught up. Employees didn't leave in chaos. They left with tired relief. The The high performers, the thinkers, the quiet warriors who once held things together. They were the first to recognize the signs. Late salaries disguised as processing delays, meetings full of anger instead of vision, empty praise masking insecurity. That's the thing about talent. It senses decline long before the world sees it. They stepped out one by one, not slamming doors, just closing them gently with resignation letters attached. Their faces softened, not bitter, just done. A company bleeds fastest when its backbone walks away, and his backbone had been people he never truly valued. He once believed replacing anyone was easy, but when those who built the machine leave, the machine stops running. He never learned that lesson until it was too late. Clients weren't dramatic about their exits either. They withdrew like tides, slow, natural, inevitable. Emails softened in tone, timelines adjusted, then slowly dissolved into silence. Big clients didn't argue. They shifted contracts elsewhere. Small clients stopped renewing. New prospects stopped asking questions. The name that once sparked interest now sparked caution. In business, reputation isn't lost in explosions. It fades in erosion. Every delayed delivery, every arrogant response, every broken promise had chipped away at the pedestal he placed himself on. He kept thinking the world admired him. In reality, most tolerated him because he was useful. Once his usefulness cracked, the tolerance evaporated. Haroon didn't notice at first. People like him never do. They confuse silence with respect, fear with loyalty, productivity with commitment. He held emergency meetings, raising his voice, pointing fingers, talking about dedication and discipline, as if shouting could glue cracks back together. But morale isn't commanded, it's earned. And the people who remained weren't committed. They were trapped, waiting, planning, hoping. A captain screaming about loyalty while the ship leaks isn't inspiring. It's delusional. And slowly, even the ones who once believed in him realized he wasn't a leader losing control. He was a frightened man clinging to a crown, slipping from his grasp. Industry circles started talking. Not loudly, not publicly, just knowingly. The same people who once nodded respectfully at his name now spoke with raised eyebrows and half smirks. Ego-built empires always attract attention on the way up, but they attract more on the way down. It wasn't karma in flames, it was karma in quiet humiliation. Vendors questioned him. Partners hesitated. Competitors didn't need to attack. They only needed to wait. He had always thought others envied him, but they were simply watching how long arrogance could run unchecked before collapsing under its own weight. Then came the message. Not shouted, not dramatic, not viral. Simple, almost casual. Haroon stepping down. Company struggling. For a moment the world seemed still. Not because it was shocking, but because inevitability finally had a timestamp. I held my phone and read it again, absorbing the simplicity of it. This wasn't revenge delivered through anger or confrontation. It wasn't payback engineered from the shadows. Life had done the work. Time had done the cutting. His downfall felt like watching a sandcastle at the shoreline. Beautiful for a moment, proud for a second, and then swallowed by the tide that always comes. Not sudden, not violent, just inevitable. I didn't smile. Not out of mercy, but out of clarity. What satisfaction could there be in celebrating a man who defeated himself? People like Haroon don't fall because someone pushes them. They fall because they climb with arrogance instead of understanding, because they treat success as entitlement instead of responsibility. His fate wasn't tragedy, it was outcome. And the truth was simple. I never needed to fight him. I only needed to outlast him. Pride is a fragile crown, and he wore his too tightly. His final days in the chair must have felt strange. Power without respect, authority without followers, decisions without impact. A lonely ruler in a kingdom built from insecurity. If he ever sat alone wondering where it went wrong, the answer was everywhere he stepped over someone. Everywhere he barked instead of guided. Everywhere he chose dominance over respect. Leaders don't fall from being challenged. They fall from never being challenged at all. He surrounded himself with fear, and fear does not warn, it watches. And as the dust settled, the world did not mourn him, nor did it mock him. It simply moved forward. That's the real punishment. Not public humiliation, not dramatic collapse, irrelevance, silence. The world forgetting the man who once thought he could not be replaced, while others quietly built, rose, and led with the very humility he lacked. A throne doesn't fall when attacked. It falls when the person sitting on it forgets why they were allowed there in the first place. And his throne, always hollow, finally crumbled beneath him. leaving nothing but a name once spoken with respect and now remembered only as a lesson. I walked out of that cafe and the world felt strangely calm. Not loud, not dramatic, not victorious, just calm. The kind of calm you get after a long storm, when everything inside you finally settles. The streets looked the same, people moved the same, the city breathed the same way it always had. But I felt different. Lighter, clearer, grounded. For years, I believed life was a race between me and him, between humiliation and redemption, between pride and payback. But that moment taught me something deeper. Real growth isn't a step above someone else. It's a step beyond who you used to be. I didn't rush home. I walked slowly, letting each step remind me of every night I sat at a small desk learning. Every silent morning I pushed myself. Every moment I felt like giving up, but didn't. I remembered the first time he mocked me, the sting in my chest, the silent anger I swallowed. I remembered questioning my worth, doubting my dreams, wondering if talent was enough, when the world seemed to reward arrogance louder than effort. And now, years later, that doubt had no space left in me. It died somewhere along the climb, quietly, like a weight finally slipping off. When I reached my office, the lights were still on. My team, the people who chose to believe in my vision, were laughing over tea, brainstorming ideas, debating strategies. Not out of fear, not to impress me, but because they cared. They believed in the work. They believed in each other. And seeing that, seeing passion instead of pressure, ambition instead of anxiety, hit harder than any business milestone ever could. Leadership wasn't about standing above people. It was about standing with them. I didn't announce my meeting with Haroon. I didn't tell them someone once powerful was now humbled. I didn't need to. My journey wasn't built on exposing his weakness. It was built on strengthening my own foundation. I walked past the glass walls, watching the team in motion, and realized how different this space felt from the one I left behind. In that old office, silence meant fear. Here, silence meant focus. Laughter wasn't a loophole. It was energy. Work wasn't survival. It was growth. I sat at my desk and leaned back, breathing slowly. My laptop pinged with new emails, opportunities, messages from clients wanting meetings. But for once, I wasn't thinking about the next deal or the next expansion. I was thinking about beginnings, how every empire starts with a decision, how every transformation begins with a breaking point, how every fall, whether mine or his, is just a doorway to a different version of life. I thought about Haroon, not with anger, not with pity, but with clarity. Sometimes life teaches softly, sometimes brutally, but it always teaches. He wasn't a villain. He was a lesson, a reminder of who not to become, a proof that without humility, success is temporary. Without empathy, leadership is failure waiting for its moment. He once ruled by force. I would lead by trust. Then I looked at the empty chair near my desk, the spot where I once imagined sitting as the boss in my dreams. Funny thing is, when you finally become the person you wished you were, you stop needing the symbols you once thought mattered. Titles don't make leaders. Power doesn't build respect, and revenge doesn't build peace. Growth does. Consistency does. Character does. I opened my laptop and typed a simple message to myself. Not a note of triumph, but a reminder, never become the person who once held you down. Because truth is, the world doesn't need more powerful people. It needs more responsible ones. Later that evening, as I stepped back onto the balcony overlooking the city, a memory flashed. That night long ago when I stood in the same place, feeling small, lost, suffocated by humiliation. That night, I promised myself I would rise, and I did. But the rise wasn't loud. It was quiet. Silent mornings, patient nights, slow growth. Revenge through improvement, not destruction. The air felt different now. The city lights didn't look distant anymore. They looked reachable, earned, mine. I realized something. The greatest revenge isn't replacing someone. It's replacing who you were, becoming so strong that the version of you who once felt powerless wouldn't even recognize the strength you carry now. People think revenge is fire, but real revenge is water, steady, calm, unstoppable. It doesn't burn others. It washes you clean. Somewhere in that stillness I smiled, not because I won, but because I evolved. He had been a chapter, an important one, yes, but still just a chapter. And chapters end. Stories move forward. Lives grow beyond old places, old wounds, old power battles. Tomorrow, I knew, would bring new challenges, new goals, new lessons. But tonight, one truth settled deeply inside me. Dignity built slowly is stronger than power gained quickly. Respect grown naturally is louder than authority demanded loudly. And success earned quietly is the kind that stays. I didn't rise to replace him. I rose to outgrow him. And I did. No applause. No spotlight. Just growth. Steady, honest, unshakable. Because real revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving yourself right. The morning light slipped through the curtains, turning dust particles into tiny floating stars. But all I felt was the weight in my chest. I had imagined this day so many times, rehearsed every line, every breath. Yet now that it was here, my nerves buzzed like live wires. My phone vibrated next to my coffee cup. A single message flashed on the screen, just 3 words, but they were enough to pull every buried emotion back to the surface. He's back today. It was absurd how quickly my hands clenched, how the muscles in my jaw locked, memories flooding faster than I could brace for them. The betrayal still sat in my bones like a bruise that never fully healed. I used to think time softened wounds, but now I know it only sharpens intent when justice never arrives on its own. I stepped outside, letting the cool breeze cut into me, grounding me in the present. The street looked the same as it always did. Vendors yelling prices, school kids running past each other, that old man sweeping the same corner he'd swept for a decade. Life moves on, even when your world cracks and bleeds. Mine had shattered the moment I discovered the truth about him, about us. I replayed every lie he told me, every promise he pretended to carve from sincerity. He didn't just break my trust, he mocked it. He gambled with my loyalty because he thought I would never walk away. And for a long time he was right. That's what stings. The version of me who trusted blindly, who believed in his words like they were gospel. She deserved better. She deserved justice. And today, she'd finally get it. I walked toward the cafe where I knew he'd show up. My heart hammered, but I forced my steps steady, measured. No shaking, no hesitation. The plan was clean. Every detail arranged with the precision of someone who'd spent countless nights strategizing in silence. I wouldn't confront him with anger. That would be too easy for him to dismiss. I wanted him to feel something deeper. Shame. Exposure. A realization that every smug smile he ever wore came with a cost he never expected to pay. When I pushed open the cafe door, the bell chimed softly. The smell of roasted beans and caramel sugar filled the air. A barista glanced up and gave a polite nod, but I didn't waste my attention on anyone except him. There he sat, back to me, shoulders relaxed like the world still belonged to him. Same confident slouch, same casual arrogance. If I didn't know the monster beneath the exterior, I might have mistaken him for just another man living his ordinary life. But I did know. I knew every selfish choice disguised as charm, every deceit masked as affection. I walked toward him, every step steady, every breath controlled. He didn't notice me until I was right beside his table, and when he finally looked up, surprise flickered across his face like a candle hit by wind. "You look different," he said, forcing a laugh, like the past was something we could both joke about. I studied his eyes, still calculating, still thinking he could manipulate the situation to his advantage. Good. Let him underestimate me one more time. It was his favorite mistake. I sat across from him without asking, folding my hands on the table like I owned the space, like I owned the moment. Silence stretched between us, thick and almost suffocating. He shifted, uncomfortable, trying to smile again, trying to regain whatever control he imagined he once had over me. Pathetic. "You moved on, right?" he finally asked, voice low, as if he feared the truth. Or maybe he feared the version of me sitting in front of him now. And he should. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I just stared. Let him see every shard of strength he forged in me through his betrayal. Let him see the version of me he never expected to face. There's power in silence when you hold it, when you use it as a mirror to reflect someone's own guilt back at them. He squirmed. Perfect. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look at it. I already knew what it meant. Everything was set, the final piece falling into place exactly as planned. He had spent so much time controlling narratives, twisting realities, making sure the world saw his curated image. Today, the truth would replace that illusion. Not because I begged for closure, not because I needed validation, but because exposing him wasn't revenge, it was justice. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm, almost quiet, but every word carried weight. You don't get to ask about my life anymore. His expression faltered. Confusion, fear, and irritation tangled in his features. He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but I lifted one hand, stopping him without raising my voice. Sit with what you did, I said. Don't look for excuses, and don't expect forgiveness. You built this ending. His jaw tensed, anger sparking, but he stayed silent. I stood up, slid my phone across the table toward him, screen glowing. Evidence, messages, voice notes, records. Everything he thought he hid. His eyes widened as he scrolled, color draining from his face. For the first time, he looked small, and in that moment, I understood something vital. Revenge isn't loud. It doesn't scream or beg to be seen. True revenge is quiet, calculated, patient. It arrives with dignity, not destruction, and leaves the guilty drowning in their own truth. I turned and walked out without another word. The bell chimed behind me again, softer this time, like a final punctuation mark. Outside, the day felt brighter, sharper, real. No trembling, no regrets. Justice wasn't an explosion, it was a release. And I stepped forward, finally unburdened, leaving the past where it belonged. Behind me, choking on everything it once took for granted.